Hi, everyone. So I wanted to do my best to add some light to, I think, what some people are feeling about this election. And I've drawn this chart. I'm sorry I can't do any better than this, but I'm going to explain what we got going on here. Along the y-axis, we got a origin at 0, and we got, in this direction here, things getting better. And in the negative line, we've got things getting worse. And so then we can plot two, and then that's what we've got, better or worse. We could measure that by income per capita in the United States, growth rate, well-being, how people do in a survey of how they think they're doing, the government deficit, how the country is doing internationally, is it respected or not? Is the world a better or worse place? Is America's place in it better or worse? It's obviously a very rough measure. I don't want to try and pretend that I can get any more precise than that. And then we've got on the vertical axis the probability that the world in 4 years' time, so after whoever it is who gets elected, Trump or Kamala, is better or worse off, if we're better or worse off in 4 years' time. So, and then on the vertical axis, we have the probability of that being the case, so the number of times, if you like, the frequency with which that would be the case if we had a perfect model of how the world might unfold, and we were to run that simulation many hundreds or thousands of times. Where does the world turn out in reality after that? And so I've then gone and drawn two bell curves. And this is not to scale, just to be clear. So we can start with the bell curve for the Democrats and Kamala. And what I've done here is done this bell curve here, which is, I hope you can see it here. It's the narrower one. And, what is in my mind is that I think that the United States is in decline, that the West is in decline. And I've put up so on this kind of like unmeasured measure that in 4 years' time, the expected or the mean of all the possible outcomes of a Kamala Harris world is that we are 5% worse off. And, in terms of all those things that I said, in some way, my perception is that we're in decline and will be 5% worse off. The budget deficit will be that much greater. America's position in the world will be that much worse. All of those things. And what I'm putting here is also, this is the bell curve, and the standard deviation covers around 60% of all possible outcomes. And the vast majority of those outcomes are quite close to that, meaningfully worse. And what we could call this perhaps is managed decline. And why is it managed decline? I do think that the Democratic Party is competent in all sorts of ways. And I don't think that, as many people don't think that Kamala Harris is a particularly good leader, but she's a very good follower of the ideas of her party. And so you'll get a tight bound of outcomes around this kind of managed decline. And there are states of the world, there are, some proportion of outcomes that in 4 years' time, when Kamala Harris has had her first term, that the USA is actually better off. And that's what we've got there on that tail. And we imagine that that sums up all the probabilities. So there is a state of the world in which if the country votes Kamala in, that we're better off. And the good news is that in the very, very worst case, we're not a lot worse off. So that's the case for voting for Kamala. So now we get into the Republican land and Donald Trump. This is actually an attempt for me to write Trump. And we have this bell curve. Now, it's not to scale. So this bell curve, actually, to put it to scale, would end up looking more like this, because the area under this bell curve needs to be the same as the area under this bell curve. But the point that this far broader distribution is making is as follows. So I've exaggerated the difference, but I think that most voters do believe that Trump really is an awful person in all sorts of ways. He's a narcissist. He's inconsistent. He's shown in a way perhaps what one would call disloyalty to all sorts of people that he's worked with, including Michael Pence and many others who've been pretty public in saying that they would not endorse him and they wouldn't work with him again. So, an expectation, the Democrats or the people who are planning to vote for Kamala Harris and for the Democrats are absolutely right in that their expectation is that the United States ends up being worse off, meaningfully worse off, if the country votes Trump than it does Kamala Harris. And, I don't know if I agree with them. I might agree with them. But if you just went on Trump versus Harris alone, that's Harris there, then I do think that I feel more unsafe with a Trump than a Harris. But here's the point that I think that many Democrats are missing. And that is that, forgive me for this being out of scale, I'm going to go with the red line here, is that with Trump, we stand a better chance of arresting America's decline in that he is a volatile character. He's unpredictable. He's going to rip apart bureaucracies that ought to be ripped apart. He's going to do brinkmanship with NATO. He's going to make the Chinese and other powers that want to challenge the United States feel more uncertain about their willingness to challenge the United States because they're not sure what he will do. And that leads to greater distribution of outcomes. So, there's while the expected outcome would be meaningfully worse off, on the upside, there's a whole lot more probability that Donald Trump actually takes the country to a better place. The price for that is that the expected outcome is worse. And also, of course, there's also the possibility that it gets a lot worse. So that's why I say to vote for Kamala and the Democrats is manage decline, but to vote for Trump is a roll of the dice. And I think so I find myself torn between these two possibilities. But every now and then I think that I would prefer to at least try to arrest America's decline, roll the dice on Elon Musk and Donald and Bill Ackman and others, and at least avoid this kind of like slow grinding road to perdition. So there's my explanation. I hope it's helpful. Thank you for listening.